Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, where we question the status quo on society's important issues while mixing in plenty of laughs along the way. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your hosts, as always, Mark Weaver and Richard Kroll. You notice I did me first again, Richie.
Well, it's kind of been a consistent theme throughout coronavirus lockdown where you always come first, and I'm getting used to it.
That you must not be listening to our shows because I have been pretty consistent in flip-flopping them. So you're going to have to go back and actually listen to our broadcast. I know that's not always your first priority every week.
I only remember you going first. It's one of those memory things where I conveniently forget.
And we have a special show today. We'll get into that in a second, but we always start with your tip of the day, Richie, and I know you have words of wisdom for our audience.
This is so dang simple, but I got to remind people, if I haven't used this one before. So we've talked a lot through the years about diet, exercise, nutrition, working out, weight loss. I'd argue that in our life, it's a top 3 topic for all people, especially since I believe we are now something like a third of all U.S. citizens are obese. It's mind-numbing. So I've been a workout guy my whole life, as you know, and I've kept in either excellent shape or not bad shape. I tend to, it's getting harder as I get older.
That's in the eye of the beholder, I guess, at this point.
You're the only one who doesn't think so.
When you said a common topic, I thought you were going to say economics. Isn't that one of the most common topics that people talk about?
If you're a weirdo from Bryn Mawr that went to a University of Penn, yes. So I'll tell you, and you know, I talked about the science before, but when you cross 35, you start to lose 1% of your testosterone every year. As you get older, your metabolism slows down. You have less muscle mass, which means you're burning less fat. So it just gets harder and harder, no matter who you are, to maintain weight. But I can tell you, I'm going through, this is one of my weeks where I'm eating very, very little. I've been eating very, very little since Sunday. Today at 2 o'clock, I'm deathly hungry, but I got to keep the momentum. Now, most people will not keep the momentum, and they'll go upstairs if they're working out of their house or they're wherever they are, and they'll grab a snack. And they'll usually grab something quick and bad for you. Whether it's a chocolate protein bar or, whatever the case may be. Drink a monstrous glass of water. I was hungry. I said, I'm gonna be tough here. I'm gonna be disciplined. I grabbed a 20-ounce glass of water. Make sure it's a huge glass of water, not just a 6-ounce glass of water to wet your whistle. Pound a 20-ounce glass of water. Even if halfway through you feel like you're getting a little sick, and just suck it all down. And you will not be hungry if you give it about a minute and a half. You may feel a little bloated and sick to your stomach, but it really, really works. So, folks, if you got to do that again an hour later or 2 hours later, I'm telling you, it's a lifesaver, and water's good for you. You'll pee a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. It's annoying. I peed like 14 times today. But I'm maintaining my momentum through a hunger strike.
That is good advice. And actually, I get chastised in my house because I have the same philosophy at night. So if I'm hungry at night, and I actually have said this to my kids and wife, like, just drink a big glass of water. And of course, now they mock me with it because whenever they're hungry, I say, just drink a big glass of water. So, because it's really particularly bad to eat at night and go to bed. But and I know that's hard because I am a pretzel guy, so I crave pretzels at night. But if I could just supplant it with water, I think I'd be better off.
There you go.
Good tip, Richie. And we have a great great show. Should be a fun show today. And with us to help have some fun is guest, patron, and musical contributor, my brother, Eric Weaver. Eric, welcome to the Are We Idiots show for the second time. It's been about a year.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be with both of you remotely, and I'm anxious to solve some of the world's biggest problems, like how to have fun during a pandemic.
Yeah, Eric was with us for, what was it? What was the last episode, Eric? You were with us, was it Pet Peeves,
Pet
right?
Peeves.
Yeah,
Yep, Pet Peeves.
Eric was with us for the Pet Peeves. And, of course, Eric and his new EWE, band has provided all the show music for us since the beginning. So, again, thank you for that, Eric, and thank you for being here for this show where we're going to talk about fun during COVID-19.
Hold on for just a second. And Eric, you gotta Mark always chastises me for apparently not listening to our episodes. He didn't remember the episode you were on, so is he actually listening?
I got it.
Well, yeah, you guys really bring me in for the tough topics, the real cutting edge topics.
Pet peeves and fun during COVID-19. But no, I remembered. And by the way, I know the songs, which, well, maybe we'll let Eric pick the song you want for lead in, Eric, but we'll do that in post-production. But we always want to thank our other patrons. Eric, of course, is a loyal patron. Mark Zolotnikoff, George Muldoon, Mike Smalls, Chris Barbie, Dr. Dave Nadler, Alvaro Puga, Rick Linares, Darren Tapp, Scott Carney, Larry Helms, and whoever else is listening out there. We'd love to have you also join the patronage. It can be $15 a month, $10 a month, $8 a month, or as little as $5 a month. So just go to our website, areweidiots.com, go to the Supporting Listeners tab, and click on our Patreon link and just sign up. It's very simple, and we would surely appreciate your support to help us continue to provide this quality entertainment. So we always go to Idiots of the Week first before we get into our main topic. And Richie, you always lead us off there. So who is your nominee for Idiot of the Week? Then we'll go to Eric, and then I'll bring up the rear.
Yeah, this one, hey, look, we are in the middle not only of a pandemic, but worldwide rioting over George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, racial injustice, police brutality, Antifa taking over cities. We're at a point of insanity not seen since maybe the 60s or the Civil War. But there comes a point where everything in the world doesn't mean we're a racist. Right. I just saw somebody writing, they're right-handed, but they were slanting it towards the left. And I think that's racist. It's racism. And while they're writing, I saw a young Caucasian girl eating vanilla ice cream. I slapped the ice cream out of her hand. Very racist. So we're getting to the point where it's out of control. Case in point. So the University of Virginia, the Cavaliers, which, is kind of a swashbuckling logo, kind of a pirate type with that, handlebar mustache and the sword and the hat, kind of like a Three Musketeers kind of thing. And they have a V logo, and they have two crossing swords underneath it. And Nike is helping update the logo. And the athletic director, Virginia athletic director, even said, listen, we want this to show that University of Virginia is tough and competitive and, all the things you want in a hardcore Division I program. And we want to have some toughness in our logo. So it's now going to be controversially changed because students and teachers have said that the curved handles on the swords are reflective of racism because they look like the outline of the serpentine walls around the University of Virginia that Jefferson built, where black workers, maybe even slaves, were kept hidden from the public eye. Now,
Couldn't
if you see
be a coincidence that the swords are just built that way to shape the hand.
I mean, I've actually tried to be sensitive and look at this. You can go look up on the internet and see the serpentining walls. One of the reasons they were built that way was because it saved a lot of materials. When you serpentine them that way, you only need one brick, and they're just as sturdy as having a multi-brick straight wall. But yes, when this was built, there were, I don't know, say incarcerated or enslaved, but there were African Americans behind those walls, not part of the student body. So there was absolutely racism shown in early University of Virginia. But to now have to redo the logo because curved handles on the sword, even infinitesimally, remotely, you look like the wall, is mind-blowing. And then here's a comment from one of the students, which is just classic. So let's see. When UVA Athletics decides to incorporate the walls into their logo designs, I felt as if they were attempting to glorify past university wrongdoings. For many, this wall evokes stringent feelings of emotional distress and pain. What does a handle have to do with the wall? And why would Nike covertly put a racist subliminal sign into the logo? And she further says,
wow, this is a long Idiots of the Week. Is this the whole show?
It's a whole show. As an African-American student who walks past these walls every day, I experience uncomfortable emotions relating to the history and justification of the walls. Why are you going to the school then? If you're going to a school that you believe symbolizes racism, why are you going to the school? Anyway, my nominee is the University of Virginia for giving in to how people eat ice cream, what the slant of their handwriting, and curves on swords.
Yeah, wow. Well, that was a lot, but I think that is ridiculous. And I guess my comment before we move to Eric is, I'm for some of these things, statues of Civil War generals necessarily. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. But I guess the question I have is, where does this all end? I mean, I saw where Winston Churchill now, and obviously George Washington, all the people on Mount Rushmore. I mean, does everything, because we all know, hey, it was different. Societal norms were different when we were born 50 years ago, let alone 300 years ago. So, boy, oh boy, I mean, it just seems like it'll be a never-ending contextual battle of the history and what to honor and what not. But boy, it's a slippery slope. So. Eric, your nominee for Idiot of the Week.
All right. Well, that was pretty heavy. This is quite different. This is right up. This is right up your guys' alley. You've had some of these on the show before, but this comes from a couple different news sources, including CNN. An Indian man who went to the hospital with abdominal pain had inserted a mobile phone charger cable into his penis. A doctor who treated him told CNN on Monday.
Ow.
The man visited a hospital in northeastern India last month, claiming he had ingested some earphones, said Dr. Walu Islam, a general surgeon at the hospital. But when the cord didn't appear, despite the patient being prescribed laxatives, doctors resorted to surgery. I'll skip a little bit. It was at that point that the X-ray revealed the man had a 2-foot-long charging cable in his bladder, inserted via his urethra, the tube that leads from the penis to the bladder. A little biology lesson there. Then I made an incision there and took out the cord, which actually the charging cable was over 2 feet long, Islam said.
Mind blowing.
If he had been honest with us, it would have saved us the trouble, and we could have treated him sooner. The patient has been discharged and is fine, according to Islam. I don't know whether he got the charger back and it's still in use. I don't know about that. I have read that people used to get sexual gratification by inserting instruments through the penis. This is one such case, and a psychiatrist can help him beyond this point, Islam said.
I don't think a psychiatrist or anyone can help this guy. Wow.
That,
Now,
I
the
don't-
one-
there's
one other thing.
Get Art.
The one other thing in another source with the same story, it had a great line. It said, "Doctors believe it was swallowed or inserted for sexual gratification. The man, said to have a history of accidental ingestion of headphones, can be seen with the curled lead inside his bladder in X-ray scans." So he's got a history of this.
Oh my! And it's a
Holy.
sexually gratifying. I mean, oh my goodness!
I'm just cringing listening to that
I'm
story.
squirming in my chair. Well,
Maybe the charger was still plugged in or something. I don't know.
Well, mine is even more mundane and more nonsensical. So I was trying to keep with the theme of the show, but mine's from Australia. 2 people went to the New South Wales hospital with fox bites amid a number of sightings of foxes at the University of New South Wales Kensington campus. At least 3 UNSW students have been bitten. The students were all attempting to pet the animal. Liz Willer, a 20-year-old computer engineering student, was walking home through campus at 10 p.m. on Saturday when she spotted the fox. Quote, "I thought, oh, that's really cool. And then it started walking toward me with intent," she said. "I thought I could maybe help it, so I gave it a pat and he chomped my hand," she said. Miss Willer said she took herself to Prince of Wales Hospital Emergency Department, where she met a 20-year-old man who had also been bitten by the fox. He said he had sat down on the ground with it because he thought it was a cat. Miss Willer said she had been chastised online for not expecting to be bitten by the fox, but that the fox didn't, quote, "didn't act like a wild animal. It wasn't trying to savage me," she said, adding that the tetanus shot she received hurt more than the bite itself. 2 other bites were filmed, and a video of student Kevin Wang being bitten on Saturday was posted on Reddit. The video shows Mr. Wang reaching out his hand out to the fox to sniff it before the fox bites it and appears to drag his arm. Students have subsequently called for Frankie, as he's been since named, to become the UNSW mascot, while authorities are seeking to remove the fox from the campus area. So yeah, it's not a cat, and foxes are wild animals. Don't try to pet them. Richie, what say you as far as our idiot of the week?
Well, I'll let my more, heavy duty, serious one go by the wayside. I'm going to go with, well, this is 2 pure idiots this week. How do you not? I don't. Does anybody take biology or zoology classes anymore? Or have you ever seen a cat? They all have flat faces, right? Since when does a cat have a 6-inch long snoot like a wolf does? People are just unbelievable. But I got to tell you, when you find a way to get 2 feet of cell phone cord up an area that you shouldn't ever try to put something in, and you're also swallowing headphones on a regular basis, I don't know what's going on, but that guy is far and away the winner.
And I think the doctor may have said it best, that we think a psychiatrist can help him from here. So what was his name again, Eric? He's going to get the dollar or the rupee.
His name didn't make the story. Only the doctor did, but we don't have that.
Well, we'll send.
Let's send the dollar to the doctor then.
Let's send him a new charger.
I wonder if it still works.
It probably will. All right, so now we're going to shift gears, and as Richie already mentioned, actually on the last episode, Rich said he was getting tired of all the news, and as he already mentioned, there's pandemic and death and racial tensions and rioting and looting and police brutality and a totally polarized society and a inflamer in chief in office. So there's plenty of that out there, but we're going to try to make this episode a lot more fun and focus on the various ways that people are having fun during COVID-19. And, our best guess right now is we're all going to be in some semblance of lockdown, social distancing, wearing masks for at least the rest of this year before a vaccine could, the earliest vaccine could come about. It's probably much more likely it's going to be at least another year from now, or maybe more. And in the worst case scenario, they might not ever get a vaccine. So it's good to focus on some fun. And I think we'd all agree that even though it's been a really rough time, there are parts of this that have been quite fun and quite good, and more time with family is probably at the top of the list. So we'll start with going through and talking about some things we've done with our own kids, and we have various age kids from younger all the way up through college and post-college and married. And then at the end of this segment, we'll talk about broader society and how we'll be dealing with some fun in the broader sense: sports, arts, travel, church, what have you. So why don't we start with young kids? And I know Eric, our guest, has a young son. He also has some older kids. But what kinds of things, Eric, did you do over the last couple of months with your family and your son, and give some ideas for folks with young kids?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I don't think I'm an authority on fun. I may be a little bit more fun than you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But not as much fun as Rich. I'm somewhere in the middle there, probably.
That's a given. You're more fun than your brother.
It's a very low bar there you got over.
Yeah. But I guess just a little background first. I mean, I think that it's probably the same for everybody. I mean, nothing kind of prepared us for this. I mean, we picked him up from school. He's 6.5. We picked him up from school on a Thursday, I think. And then on Friday, they announced school's going to be closed indefinitely. So I've done pandemic planning for my company before, but I had no pandemic plan for my family. So, we were caught off guard and had to react pretty quickly. Fortunately, we have pretty flexible jobs, and we were able to adapt and get things moving. And I think the first thing we did that helped was we tried to keep him on like a school-like schedule. We set up timers and tried to keep that schedule going, so he wasn't just trying to watch TV all day or bother us. So we had to try to get some balance in our life. But we were surprised to find that he didn't really complain too much about, he's in kindergarten, so missing school wasn't that big a deal, but missing his friends and we just kept things really simple at first and tried to get outside a lot, rode bikes a lot and do those kind of things. I mean, I think that, overall we did a lot more outside stuff. March was a little bit, the weather was not as great as more recently, but just a lot of outdoor stuff we did. We have a fire pit. We have a pretty good yard that can support some fun stuff. So we've probably had 10 fire pits complete with s'mores and all that kind of stuff over the last 90 days or so. So we do a lot of fire pits. We have a tree house. We had 2 different kinds of we got some help eventually. The first 4 weeks were a little crazy. Then we got my niece, your daughter, to help us, and my older son to help us during the day. And each of them had different personalities. So my older son would do a lot of sports with Nash, and then my niece would do a lot of hikes and exploring and science projects and cooking. And so we really just kept it simple and did very, very basic things. And we were surprised that, it went pretty well. I would say that's the way it went at first.
I saw one video that, and I forget it was on Facebook or you distributed it, but your son was coming down the driveway and he just crashed his bike into a mulch pile, which I thought was hysterical. Typical little boy, just boom, just into the soft mulch. I thought that was a riot. Looked like he was having fun with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's always something that you can get creative with around the house. We were spreading mulch, and he said, well, it's a good thing to jump in. It's a good thing to ride your bike on. At that age, I probably did this when I was a kid. We probably built forts in every room of the house, in the garage, on the deck, in under the swing set. We're just building forts and hiding in them for hours a day. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on.
Awesome. Any thoughts, Richie, on the younger kids? I know your daughter's a little bit older. We'll move to that next. But any thoughts on Eric's comments before we move to you?
Yeah, I think the real young kids, preschool, kindergarten, first, second grade, one of the hardest things in the world was to keep them any kind of focused on their schoolwork, doing it from home, right? That's I know homeschooling's on the rise, but for the kids that were used to going to school and then all of a sudden for 2 or 3 months having to work out of the house, and their young minds have no concept of other than homework, maybe, like, working like mommy or daddy during the day. Really, it's like working out of the house, right? And so hard to keep a schedule and focus. But I think that's smart where you can't back off. I know a lot of stay-at-home moms or dads put a lot of time, energy, and effort to trying to adhere to a schedule, 8 to 4, 9 to 3, something that resembled, all right, we're going to do math, we're going to do reading, we're going to do history, whatever. So although that's not in the fun category, I think it was super important for young kids to, parents that just panicked and, don't have a strong disciplinary hand and maybe lost their household, where if they just give up and say, oh, whatever, do whatever you want,
Right.
then
Or watch TV,
really,
watch TV or play video games
Right.
the whole time.
We actually sent
Go ahead.
we sent the schedule out we created a schedule and sent it out to a bunch of neighbors, and everyone started kind of following that same schedule, because it really helped. Because then my son would be like, oh, is it aftercare time yet? Is it 4:00? Can I go outside? Like, he would follow the schedule. So it did help.
well, I know some parents that, if they both worked, it was a real challenge. A lot of them were hiring nannies or maybe college students as tutors to come in. And it cost money, right? I mean,
Right.
but I think parents that gave up too easily and threw in the towel, those kids, think about it, they're going to be behind going into the next grade. If they missed 3 months, 2 or 3 months of consistent schooling, they could be behind. They're critical years for reading, math, etc. So I'm wondering how that's going to play out when these kids now enter the next grade.
Yeah, but
Maybe.
I would say I fully acknowledge that the younger age group is definitely the hardest to keep entertained. And I can imagine that your son Eric wasn't real cooperative. Like, oh, mommy and daddy have to be on work calls. Like, the younger kids don't respect that quiet. They need to be quiet or anything like that. So that's got to be hard. Where the older kids, you can kind of manage that a little bit. So
Yeah, but we've all seen on Zoom calls and business calls, kids coming into the background and sitting on mom or dad's lap during a business call. It's happening all over the place.
right. So let's move to the older group, and I've kind of roughly put this at maybe 7 years old all the way up through 13 or 14, somewhere in that range. But your daughter falls into, Rich. So what kinds of things have the Kroll household done for fun during COVID that with your daughter, and maybe even without?
Well, one of the first things I learned is you have to add to your patience quota. Right? If you're someone that's short on patience or easily annoyed or distracted, there was a lot more leeway with, there's a lot more things you can get done now, like keeping your room clean, but I wasn't going to sweat the small stuff. And one of the things kids seem this age, she's 11, seem to be fascinated and obsessed by is slime. And now there's like 1,000 companies that sell slime and slime kits and aroma slime and textured slime and shiny slime and clear slime, and you can make your own slime and custom slime, and she loves it. She's been making batches of slime like she's Philadelphia Gear Manufacturing, and that's been keeping her busy. So along those lines, if your kid's competitive at all, I've tried to do a lot of challenges. So it's been a great opportunity to spend more quality time with my daughter than I normally would not have, I'm finding, 1 or 2 hours a day to do one-on-one sports. And then kind of we'll do some training and some skills, but I'll kind of let her pick the games, whether it's, horse in basketball or trying to beat a certain time running a quarter mile or how many pop-ups she can catch, in softball. And then we keep record of it, right? You keep a daily journal. You caught 9 in a row, or you ran the quarter mile in 2 minutes, whatever the case may be. You made 5 foul shots in a row.
I knew that one was coming. The foul shot. That goes in the family there. We know that one.
I am going to make sure she's an 80% lifetime free throw shooter. But so it's kind of cool to keep a journal and watch the progress or not, right? Hey, look, you haven't improved in this area. And, a lot of kids constantly want to get better at stuff. Art projects. We both, there's all these places like Color Me Mine where you could walk in the shop when there wasn't lockdown, pick out a ceramic coffee cup or plate or some kind of figurine. You paint it, and then they fire it up for you. Even heirloom kind of stuff. So we did some of that where they'll do, you pick the stuff out online, they send it to your house, and then you paint it as a family together. We've done watercolor paintings together. We've done some sketches and all sorts. We've painted. We made some acrylic paintings that you could hang on the wall in a room. My wife did one. I did 2. My daughter did 2. And that's kind of time-consuming and fun. Board games, we've done a lot of Monopoly and Clue. After you've done that 10 times, it gets a little boring. But if you haven't done that yet, that can be fun to bring the family together. And I'll tell you one I got turned on to. I'm not a video guy. I'm not at all. Not an ounce of video in me. But there's some games you can play on your phone or an iPad or a tablet. That's actually a lot of fun. Internet Scrabble. There's archery. There's Pong. There's Battleship. There's basketball shooter. There's filler. And no matter where I am or where she is, whether it's in the house, outside the house, different rooms, even if she's at her grandmother's house, you can send this stuff back and forth and get really competitive. So things I would never have done in normal times.
Awesome. That it's funny you mentioned some board games, and all of those we've never played during this pandemic. I've played them in the past, but I just think that's funny that different families migrate to certain games. So, Eric, any comments on Rich's comments before I go with the older kids?
On the competitive side, I mean, we did something similar with Nash, where we bought some odds and ends from Amazon, and we created like a school store of kites and books and stickers and things like that. So we would have him earn those during the week, because we were trying to do anything we could to keep him happy and content. So that worked out pretty well for us, where he would earn dollars through the week, and then on Saturday he would buy something from the school store with what he earned for the week. So that was one
that's a good
way
idea.
we incented him.
I may need to do that for my 16-year-old.
Yeah. And the slime, we tried to buy the borax that you need for the slime, and it was all sold out on Amazon. I mean, I don't know how you got it, Rich, because that stuff is hard to find right now.
When Eric and I were young, there used to be slugs. Speaking of slime, there used to be slugs on my parents' walk, and I probably shouldn't mention some of the things we used to do to those slugs, but they're probably a little bit cruel. But and actually, didn't your daughter not like the slug in our shower down in our beach house, Rich? So maybe she's adapted to slime by now, right? Because she didn't like the slugs. I know that.
if the slime actually had eyes and a heartbeat, I don't think she would like it.
All right, so we'll move to some of the things we've done as a family, and for reference, my youngest is 16, and I still have an older daughter at home as well, and actually a daughter back home now during COVID. Actually, 2 daughters back home during COVID at various times, and then a married daughter that's out of the house. But here's some of the things. I'll rip through them a little bit on the quicker side. So card games. We've played Go Fish, believe it or not. War. And 5 Crowns we've played a lot. Five Crowns. I think, Richie, we taught you that game down at our beach house.
Yep.
Board games, chess, checkers, Pictionary, headbands. If you're not familiar with that, headbands is basically you put a headband on that has a card in it with a object or a name or whatever, and you have to just find out by asking questions what it is, and whoever the first one to get it wins. It was actually quite fun. Cards Against Humanity. I will put a disclaimer on this that's not something you want to play with your younger. Actually, it's not something you want to play with your kids at all, because there was a lot of sexually suggestive cards in that, and it was a little bit embarrassing. My wife and I ended up just like leaving. We did cooking classes. My wife's quite a good cook, and she taught my son to cook some things. We did, like Eric, we've done lots of fires, roasting marshmallows. We set up cornhole in our driveway. So that was a lot of fun. You know, cornhole isn't just for at Phillies games or basketball, outside of you can do it at anywhere. Put it on your driveway. Lots of walks, riding bikes. For sports, we've done fishing and golf. We participated in a drive-by birthday party. Eric's beautiful wife. We did that as a family.
Better than a drive-by shooting.
Yeah, that's for sure. Probably the most unique thing we've done, and maybe it's because we have 4 daughters, but we did a home prom one night, and all of my daughters are out of school, but we've had a lot of proms over the years, so we have a lot of prom dresses. So one night, my wife and daughters got this idea that we're all going to get dressed up and kind of do a home prom, which really meant just kind of putting on some music and dressing up and taking pictures. But they got all their old prom gowns. My wife, I think, put on a prom gown too, or some kind of, I don't think it was a wedding gown. I think it was a prom gown. And we took pictures like the prom. So
yeah, the pictures are great. Your white tux with the top hat and cane looked great, Mark.
Wow, that is the most unique thing I've heard so far.
I do have some other things I want to do. I want to do a virtual. I heard you can do virtual tours. I'm surprised, Richie, you haven't done this. Virtual tours of the national parks. I was reading about that, and I think that would be really cool. There's probably at least 10 different national parks that you can do a virtual tour of. And then Eric knows this. I'm a big family movie guy. We haven't broken in to the old family movies, but that's definitely something I'm going to want to do. Have multiple. My kids are probably cringing when I do that, but we have. I was with the video camera from the time the kids were very young. Actually, even before we had kids, I had a video camera. So there's lots of old home movies that during this pandemic, I definitely want to break them out when all the kids are around. So that's any comments on my list?
Yeah, I got to give you credit where credit's due, because normally you're boring as a box of rocks, but you've given me some great ideas. I'm not wearing a white top hat like a nut job, but the virtual tour of national parks is a fantastic idea. There's a bunch of national parks that have been on my bucket list we just never seem to get to. But picture being able, if you have a big screen TV, 60, 65, 70 inch, grab a bowl of popcorn, pull up a Diet Dr. Pepper, and go through the Grand Canyon or whatever. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, and actually,
now you can up that a little bit. I know a neighbor is doing kind of like a drive-in theater in his backyard. Not a drive-in, but he's putting an outdoor theater, and he's going to paint on the lawn for each family to have a 10 by 10 box to sit in, so there's social distancing. So you get an outdoor screen and then do your national park tour. That'd be nice.
Oh, that's even better. I heard you can do a virtual safari too, which is also kind of cool. So
yeah, get that fox and
the Australian fox, Frankie. All right, so we have about 15 minutes left or so, 10 or 15 minutes, but we want to kind of transition the conversation now to what is broader society going to be doing for fun, and we'll probably limit the sports to the major sports, but just more generally, when do you think? I know, Eric, you're a big baseball fan. When do you think sports will come back in any form? I think the first pro sport to come back was well, at least major sport was golf, if you call that a sport. This past weekend, pro golf was played, first pro tournament without fans. But, basketball is talking about an abbreviated, 23 team or something like that at Disney World. Football really has been kind of coy about what they're doing. Baseball can't seem to get their act together. Obviously we can talk about concerts and theaters and travel, but, kind of just generally, let's start with sports. What do you think? I mean, because we're a sports-oriented society. What do you guys think about what sports is going to look like, and how are people going to be entertained by sports? We'll throw it to you first, Richie.
So I think they're realizing this is a much more complex issue than they first thought. I think a lot of the U.S. folks are keeping a close eye on like South Korean baseball and the European soccer leagues that are coming back without fans. But, baseball and soccer are not as, okay, there's contact at times, but there's a lot less contact. Sports like football, basketball, hockey, there's contact and close contact and people bleeding and spitting on each other every single play. And I think the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans just reported some of their players have coronavirus.
What about the fans, though? I mean, that's what I'm more focused on is when do you think fans, because we're talking about fun during COVID, when do you think the fans will be able to?
Well, hold on. I'm getting to the point where it may not matter, because I don't know that they're going to be able to put sports together in general to even have fans to go to.
Really?
Because here's the other problem. Let's say you start a season back up, or the NHL playoffs or NBA playoffs or whatever, and one team gets coronavirus. And they can't play now for 2 weeks. Are all those games they were going to play be forfeits? It'd be the weirdest win-loss column in sports history with forfeits and all that kind of stuff. So the point is, I'm not so sure you could start this up and have to end it within a couple of weeks. I'm not sure fans are even going to be able to go to sporting events.
Well, I hadn't even thought of that, because I think every sport so far is planning on what they're going to do when players, a few, get COVID. But I never even thought of that scenario where they would get so many on the team that would have it that they couldn't field a team. I hadn't even thought of that. Had you, Eric?
Well, yeah, but I mean, Michael Jordan played with the flu, right? These guys can play through this stuff.
That's a good point. That's a solid point.
These guys are super healthy people. I bet 80% of them show no symptoms with this stuff. I think the fans are the big issue, and then the economics of each game is like baseball. They get a much bigger percentage of their revenue, I think, from fans than other sports. Like NFL has such a huge TV contract. They can probably survive with just TV and no fans, but baseball can't. That's why baseball is struggling right now. So I think it's really, for some of the sports, it's about when can the fans get back. And I saw a survey on the local sports radio station that said like over 50% of the listeners are ready to go back to a packed stadium today. So, I mean, it's not, the fans will go back, unfortunately. It's just who knows what would happen or whether baseball or football or hockey or whatever would allow that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like on a baseball, well, actually all sports tickets, don't they have like a liability disclaimer on the back of the ticket, like saying whenever you use this, you waive your right to sue or something like that? I mean, they probably would have to do that, because I think that the legal liability is such that would keep, I would think, keep the people, the owners from attempting to do
you
that.
can get hit by a baseball, get hit by a baseball or a puck. Actually, probably the only safe place to go is a Miami Marlins game. There's only like 5 people there. It's safer than your house.
Well, to that point, they may also attempt to do something like churches are doing now, where every other pew is vacated and you can't sit more than 6 feet, close to somebody. The stadiums may have to have like every other row or every other seat or roped off sections for social distancing to at least recoup some of the revenue. But there are some really deep-rooted problems when you think it through deeply, it's complex.
Even concessions are trouble. How to keep that clean, and it's a mess.
Well, I heard someone point out that actually during this whole time, you have been able to fly, and actually we've seen on social media some flights that are totally packed, and actually they're getting even more packed. So you right now and through this whole time, you could sit next to someone within inches with a mask on and fly, and that's inside an airliner. But why couldn't you do that in a stadium? You know what I mean? It's so inconsistent. And, we saw they're arresting moms over the last couple months with bringing their kids to a park, but then they'll let people protest, packed in a parkway. So, there's so much inconsistency in the messaging here and the practical application of it. I don't know, Eric. I don't know that everyone will come back, or even 50% of them will come back, the fans. I'm not positive they would.
Yeah, I know I wouldn't, not yet, but it sounds like, at least from that one survey that and listening to the radio, that people are ready. I don't know that they've thought it through, but they say they're ready.
So, Richie, and under what circumstances, pick your favorite sport, under what circumstances would you be willing to go to I'll just pick an Eagles game, an NFL game? What would have to be in place for you to feel safe doing that right now?
Well, I probably am not going to tailgate. If it was, I'm happy. I'm just as happy watching the game on television, and sometimes that's a lot better. The game's over and you're already home versus dealing with 2 hours of traffic and drunk morons. But I think if it was a really big game I wanted to be at, and I knew I could sit without being, flooded with people in front of me, next to me, behind me, I could get away with the concessions. But if they had some social distancing rules that were enforced, it's going to be tough, right? Football fans get pretty rowdy, and if they're tailgating for 8 hours, they're not going to follow the rules. But if there was guarantee spacing, and it was a big enough game and a nice day, and I'd want to be outside versus inside, I would consider it.
And everyone would have to wear a mask, because they said one of the biggest problems is because they've kind of discounted over the last few weeks the surface area spread. But, they say when people are shouting, so that they said concerts might be the last thing to come back, because, people are singing along and shouting. And I guess that happens obviously at sporting events as well. But I think concerts are even bigger that, and you're usually packed in even tighter. So, the droplets are the ones that are supposedly the biggest risk, and especially indoors. So indoor concerts might be the last thing to come back online. What about travel, guys? When do you think people will be willing to get on airplanes en masse anymore? Everyone's pretty much driving to vacations this year, and I know we've talked about some alternatives to that, but really airplane travel is what kind of makes the world go. When do you think that comes back en masse?
I think it's loosening up now. Because quite honestly, these planes are cleaner than they ever were. I guarantee there were tens and tens of flights we all were on that were crawling with mega germs. All over the seats were on, and we never really cared. How many times did you get sick after a flight? I remember getting sick a couple times and wondering where it came from as they processed the air, and people are coughing and wiping their nose on the armrests and on magazines, and who knows where the stewardess was the night before handing you your drink. So, right, but everything's spotless, right? These things are super wiped down, and you have to wear a mask. So I'm actually ready. We're considering flying somewhere, short flight, end of July. We have to wear masks, and I'm ready to. It's been 7 or 8 months. I haven't flown since January. By then, I think they have their act together with cleanliness, and I think you'll start seeing this loosen up in the summer as coronavirus in some areas starts to die out. I know it's spiking in areas. They're letting everybody touch each other and kiss each other again. But I think the hot summer months are when you're going to see some people finally jumping on planes in mass.
Now,
yeah, I think I do think that I'd be more willing to fly than go to a packed stadium. I think that that's you're kind of sitting there. Once you get on the plane, if it's clean, you're just sitting there with your mask on, or you're next to someone you know. It's a lot more appealing than going to a ballpark.
I was thinking that that really from an economic standpoint, the plane travel really is the most important. Now, of course, right now countries are forbidding other citizens to come to their country because they don't want them to bring the disease. So, domestic air travel, if you believe what Rich is saying, I think that is going to be a critical component of our economy coming back, but it really won't be fully back until we get all international travel. And I think that's going to have to do with countries loosening up their travel rules, because right now you can't fly anywhere in another country. I think almost every.
That's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't do it. So we have a couple minutes left. What about? This isn't really under the category of fun necessarily, but just doctor's appointments and dentists and I was thinking I'd like to get my teeth cleaned, but I'm not so sure I want that up close and personal. I guess getting your hair cut, all the personal grooming stuff. When does society kind of free up that? What do you think, Eric?
Well, I think that you got to get your teeth cleaned, you got to get your hair cut. So I think these things have to be done in a safe manner. I just heard a story this morning about people opening up salons, and both people were wearing masks. And I think they said someone cut 6 or 7 people's hair, and then they found out they had coronavirus, and no one, but no one got infected. No one got infected. And so they're using that as kind of a story to base, it's a small sample size, but
right.
Saying see, we can do this safely. We had masks on and no one got infected. So I think that you can do those kind of things safely. Maybe it'll keep the dental hygienist from talking to me so much too. That'd be good.
That is the worst.
When you have a mouth full of photographic equipment and your gums are bleeding, and she's like, "So, tell me what you liked about your anniversary." Are you kidding me? That's always amazes me when they try to talk to you. But I'll tell you what, if you've seen some friends and family members self-haircuts, you will absolutely say, please, I don't care if they have rickets, scurvy, and coronavirus, go get your haircut.
Those are your two
really
favorites.
Awful
those are your two favorites, scurvy and rickets. You've been using those for 40 years. All right, so
they are two of my favorites.
So for our final comments, we'll go to Eric first, then Richie, and then I'll close the show up. Eric, fun during COVID. Any final comments that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, a couple things that I didn't get to touch on. One I thought was interesting. RV rentals are up 650%. So on the travel side, that's what people are choosing to do. Now, I have a feeling that 6 months from now, the RV accidents will also be up 650%. Because you have all these people driving these things around that they don't know how to handle. One other thing I know, lots of our friends are getting puppies. I don't know,
us included.
Lots and lots of puppies. That's what people are filling the time with. But generally speaking, I would say that there is some good stuff coming out of this if you stay creative. Lots of good family time. A lot less pressure to. Oh, it's the weekend. We got to do something, like make dinner reservations, get a babysitter, plan a weekend trip. Let's go here, let's go there. And having all that removed and just living a simpler life has actually been really enjoyable and fun.
Yeah. And actually our younger sister confessed that she actually hopes it doesn't get solved anytime soon. She's a big environmentalist. And she lives in Newport Beach, and she said that LA's air quality has been pristine for the last couple months, and she said that's just fine with her. We stay like this. So, Richie, what are your final comments?
That's a great point. Think of 100 years of industrial pollution, and a lot of it is significantly subsiding in just 4 months. That's shows you how resilient nature is, but I would tell people that are freaking out about their freedoms being taken away and they're handcuffed and their lives are miserable. Folks, relax. I mean, look for the silver lining. This has been, like Eric said, this has been a great opportunity to spend quality time with your family that you could look back on What's the famous song "Cats in the Cradle"?
Yep, Harry
Right.
Chapin.
That's
One of Mark's
always-
favorites.
Right, I'll always remember that. It's a great song. It's a horrible storyline.
Right.
Take time with your little kids. Be patient with your kids. Use this to make them better people. Use this to get to know each other better and have fun with each other versus always going in different directions and going your own way. This is as bad as it's been in some categories. It's been such a blessing in disguise to bring people close together, and you'll remember this for the rest of your lives.
Yeah, and it has been difficult, and people tend to think in the present tense a lot, and they think that the things that happened to them are worse than in history. But there's been a lot worse things in history. I saw one guy, I think I'm paraphrasing a little bit on Twitter. He said, when our parents' generation, because they were classifying this as a war on the COVID-19, and he said, our grandparents' generation, a war meant you die in a ditch in Okinawa. And our generation, we gotta sit at home and watch Netflix.
Right.
Just put things in perspective. But no, I totally agree that this has been a unique time, and there's going to be lots of things we're going to look back on this that we'll cherish, and frankly, we'll probably miss again when we do get a vaccine. We'll probably go back to some of our old tendencies, but I hope not. I hope we keep some of the good and keep some of the priority on family. And boy, doesn't our country need better families and more cohesive families. So that's my final comment. So good show. Thanks, Eric, for joining us for this. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your patronage and, of course, your music. And as we've been talking about, there's these kind of parallel crises that we're dealing with. And our shows are going to be centered around that. We have some ideas about doing a show on white privilege. We have a show, I think, in the planning about the immune system, which I know Richie cares a lot about that episode. And of course, there's elections that are only about 5.5 months away. So there's lots of topics coming up. And as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See you all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Please download, subscribe, share, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also our website.
True love won't say goodbye.